Hey guys, it's Rachel with Be Healed Dog Training, and we're going to be taking a look at Jake's introduction to the prong collar and the first time that he worked on it and started learning heel. So just a couple little clips here to show you what we were starting with. Jake was one of the stronger pullers that I've had, and after doing just a short walk with him in a slip lead, I actually had red marks on my hands. This guy was super, super strong. So wanted to get him in a prong collar really quickly. He was choking himself out and gagging constantly on this slip lead. That's one reason I love a prong collar so much, is when you have a prong collar appropriately fitted and you're using it correctly, dogs don't choke on them like they do on a regular flat buckle collar or a slip lead or any of your other basic collars. A lot of people will move to a harness if they have a dog who is choking themselves out, but that actually encourages the dog to pull more. So that's why we choose the prong collar. Now what you're seeing me do here, I've put the prong collar on. I always have a slip lead as a backup collar, as a backup leash when I first do prong collar work. And that's just because it is possible for a prong collar to come off when you use it. Not common, but common enough. So what I'm starting off doing right off the bat is teaching him pressure and release. So I'm letting him get a few steps away from me, and then I'm adding a little bit of pressure on the leash. Initially he kind of bolted away from me in typical Jake fashion up to that point, and it kind of popped him on the leash and got him to pay a little bit of attention. He was like, oh, whoa, what are we doing? So now I'm just applying gentle pressure until he yields to that pressure. And I always start that off with every dog just to show them how it feels, get them used to what the collar feels like and how to give to that pressure. Because that's the whole point, is we want there to be a pressure source when the dog is not in a heel position and then zero pressure when the dog is. Now what I'm doing are these 180 moves that I like to do with just about every dog when I first start working on their leash work. And the idea is that I'm constantly changing direction in order to get the dog paying attention to me. So Jake, as you saw before, liked to get way out ahead and just pull, pull, pull. So what I'm doing is before he gets to the end of the leash and can get a steady pull on it, because yes, a dog can pull on a prong collar. Some people think that if you just put a prong collar on, that'll automatically fix your problem, but typically not. They can pull on a prong collar. So we want to teach him to walk beside me on a soft leash. So what I'm doing is right before he reaches the end of the leash, and he's paying me zero attention, I'm suddenly switching directions, walking the other way, and then boom, he hits the end of that leash, snaps around to see what I'm doing, kind of like, whoa, what the heck? How'd you get way over there? I better pay attention to you. And when we repeat this over and over, as you see here, he starts putting himself more in that heel position where he is paying attention and following me and actually putting himself in that follow position that we want. We want the dogs to walk slightly behind us in a heel. And the reason for that is we want to be the leader. I want Jake to be paying attention to me and not the thousands of distractions around us. So after doing lots of 180 moves and I get the dog to start to focus and pay more attention, now I'm going to shorten up my leash, as you see here, and start actually asking for a more kind of formal looking heel position. Where I get a little more specific about what I'm asking for. So what I'm doing here is, again, I've got my leash very short, but you notice it's not tight, and that's important. It's important to have it short. It's also important to have it not tight. And you want to use a popping motion with this, and it doesn't necessarily mean a hard pop, though if you need to give a firm pop, you absolutely can. If you've got a good quality prong collar, and I recommend the Herm Springer brand, Herm Springer, if you have a good quality prong collar, you're not going to injure or hurt a dog with this. There's a lot of information out there that says you will, because there's a lot of misinformation that's spread about these collars. But you can see how gentle this process is, even with a very strong puller. I mean, we've been working together in this video for what, like 4 minutes or so now, and totally different dog already, with pretty minimal pressure, pretty minimal work here. Anyway, so going back to the popping motion, anytime the dog comes out of the position that I want him in, so slightly behind my leg, I'm going to give a little pop on that leash so that the dog steps back to that, or back from that pressure. The idea being that I don't want to pull the dog and have them be able to pull back against me. I want to deliver information through my leash and have the dog respond to it. And you can see here, I'm having to give those little pops over and over and over, but I would much rather do kind of a series of pops than to get into the constant pull. Now, it's really important to make sure that when you do deliver a little pop through your leash that you are, if the dog's pulling ahead, that you are popping straight backwards, kind of parallel to the dog's back. You don't want to pop up on the leash, you want to pop backwards because the whole idea is that the dog yields to pressure. So you put the pressure on that's guiding the dog backwards and they take a step back. Now, if they're lagging behind, you would pop that leash forwards. If they suddenly stray off to the right, you'd pop it left, and so on. And so now that's what I'm doing here. And you can see here, I'm also playing with changing my pace. So I'm walking faster and slower, expecting him to match my pace. Um, and again, anytime he steps outside of the position I want, it's just a little pop back into place. And then there's zero pressure. You can see on the leash there, when he's in the correct position, you see a little bit of a loop in the leash and he's getting zero pressure at all. And that's basically the reward for being in a proper heel. You can also mark this with good. I don't usually use food with teaching a heel. You can. I've seen plenty of people who do it. I usually prefer not to. I do food training with just about every other command. But with my leash work, I just want my leash to do the talking. And all of this leash work is about so much more than just fixing the physical problem of having your dog pull. Even if you have a dog that doesn't pull or that doesn't pull very hard on the leash, you really want to teach them to walk in a proper heel because it's mostly about the mental state of the dog. I want the dog to be in a follow role, not in a leader role, because I should be the leader. Of the two of us, I should be the one making the decisions on the walk, and I want the dog to be checked in with me and paying attention. You see here, I'm turning into him. When you are working on changing direction, if you are turning towards the dog, you can just kind of turn into them, maybe even bump them with your knee to get them to back up just a little bit. But going back to the leadership thing, you should be the leader on the walk. You absolutely should be in charge. You should be the one that's making the decisions. And you want your dog to check in and be paying attention and going, hey, what's up? What are we doing? You know, if you're worried about, oh, it's not fair, it's the dog's walk too, they should be allowed to sniff everything, they should be allowed to go where they want, like, that's your right to feel that way, but you're not going to have a dog that's as checked in with you. And if you have something come up that you need to address or handle, good luck. It's going to be a lot harder for you than if you've got a dog that respects what you're doing, what you're asking. Now here I've got the leash really long, and that is not for any practical purposes. That is just to show you that for the most part, the leash is not being used at this point to influence him. You saw me have to do a little bit of kind of guiding with the leash there some, but you can see how much he really is just paying attention here. So I'm doing this to demonstrate you don't want to walk your dog on a leash this long. When you have your leash the proper length, it should be short enough to where you don't even have to look at them to know if they're in a proper heel. If they move out of the heel position, you'll feel it, but there's just enough length to give you slack when they're in the right spot. And that's it for Jake's first session working on the prong collar and learning how to walk in a heel. As you can see, it was just under 8 minutes that we worked together and completely transformed the way he was walking on the leash. You can have similar results as well. You can do this yourself. If you've not tried a prong collar, get out there, get you a Hermspringer prong collar. You'd be amazed at the results that you can get and how quickly you can see differences in your dog and have a nice, pleasant walk with your dog. I like to put this information out there just because there is so much bad information out there about prong collars, and now you can see for yourself in a video that shows you the entire session without cutting away how gentle of a process it is and how simple of a process it is. Again, not as simple as just sticking on a prong collar and expecting miracles. You've got to make sure that you have a good quality prong collar, that you fit it properly, and that you put the training in. But you can, again, have drastic results yourselves and get out there and enjoy your walks with your dog.